Good morning. It's a wonderful, beautiful Friday morning. We've had an interesting week. We're going to talk about the week. We're going to talk a little bit about yesterday and, of course, what's going on today. I'm Pete Najarian. This is The Take for Market Rebellion. Well, here we are. It's Friday. And you look back to yesterday, and we had a pretty bumpy ride yesterday. It was actually pretty interesting because the Dow started the day flat. Nasdaq was down about 60 points. As we shifted into the day a little bit further, suddenly the Dow's down about 100 points. Nasdaq's down about 100 points. Then they both returned back to flat, only to see the Dow actually close beneath that 30,000 level and potentially for a negative week this week, depending on how things go today. But we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. But you look over at the Nasdaq, and the Nasdaq actually not only recovered off of those lows, but actually moved to the upside in a pretty significant way, about 40, 50 points to the upside. So very, very interesting to watch that whole flip. And what was part of the flipping? Well, it was Tesla, it was Zoom, it was Apple, it was sort of a variety of names. The semiconductors flipped around and turned into the green. Biotech hit another all-time high. And by the way, I'll give you a spoiler alert, all-time high again today. So biotech continues to be very, very strong. And we talk about that all the time, and it's not talked about enough in terms of the pressure and oftentimes the air that gets underneath the Nasdaq itself to push it to the upside. But certainly biotech has been absolutely on an unreal run to the upside. It's not just Moderna and some of those names. It's across the board. We're seeing a nice participation there. Tech turned off the lows as well. So you get that whole combination, and all of a sudden you've got obviously the Nasdaq, which turned into the green, but some of that pulling that we'd had on the Dow itself, not as much with the S&P. And why is that? Well, when you look at some of the energy names, wow, energy again on fire. You look at the XOP yesterday, that was up about 5.25%. And we've talked about time and time again seeing the unusual option activity that's been going into that, as well as some of the individual energy names. But the XOP, we've had multiple days this week where we've seen some great option paper trading it to the upside. The stock earlier in the week, I think when we had that biggest paper that we'd seen in there, stock was trading somewhere in the 59s and it got up into the 62s. So a pretty nice run in a hurry, much faster than everybody else. By the way, on the side of my eye, I can see, and we will address it, but put in your Q&A right now. Do whatever you want as far as that, because we'll try to hit a few of those as fast as we can, and we're not going to hold you guys all day long. We all got an exciting Friday in front of us and a lot to trade. So when I look at energy, it's Occidental, it's Apache, it was Diamondback, it's Hess, it's Devon, it's EOG, it's Holly, it's Pioneer. I mean, you go through the whole list. One Oak. It was a really, really strong day yesterday for energy once again. Materials as well. We had Vale, which we've talked about time and time again, and all the option paper that we've had in there. Well, that hit new highs yesterday, at least 52-week highs yesterday. Had some nice participation also from Cliffs. We had some from Freeport-McMoRan. We had some from Alcoa. So a pretty nice move in terms of the material space yesterday as well. Volatility. Yep, we had another pretty decent. We talk about volatility day. It popped up towards 23.5, finished close to the mid 22s, but we've been bouncing around. It seems like somewhere between, call it 21 and 23 for a little while now. And today, as a matter of fact, we're still in that somewhat of that range. A pretty nice day, but a little bit slower day yesterday in terms of the 32 million contracts that traded, a little more than 32 million contracts yesterday. It was Apple, it was Tesla, it was Palantir. Those are the names that just seem to be the names, at least recently, have been in that leadership role. So today, interesting start to the day today as well, because we're right around that 30,000 level in terms of the Dow and some movement, and the focus continues to be on two things. It's obviously on these cases of the virus, and that's something concerning, and everybody paying very close attention to that, but also just as much attention towards stimulus and what kind of package are we going to get? And everybody thought it was going to happen fairly rapidly once we got through the elections and all the rest of that. It's still hanging around, and we still don't have all the answers, but that's something that certainly the markets are definitely focused on. And because of this pandemic that we've been in, there are certain names that are shifting around almost on a daily basis, whether it's airlines or cruise ships, certainly seem to be very, very volatile for a lot of different reasons right now. So early on, we had the Dow down about 120 points. Then the Nasdaq was down about 65 points, and the S&P down about 16 points, somewhere in there. all about 0.5% off. Well, we're shifting around a little bit now. We're watching the Dow actually start to come back a little bit. Still some pressure on the Nasdaq. It's still down, call it somewhere between 40 and 50 points. Last I had the opportunity to look. So some interesting movement. We had volatility 23.5. That was up about 4% today. Early on, it was starting to ease back as the Dow. By the way, early on, only 2 stocks in the Dow were in the green. We had Disney and we had Coke. Procter immediately started to come back in with that as well. So give it 3 stocks out of 30. Now we're seeing a little bit of a shift. We see the industrial starting to participate just a little bit. They started off the day kind of flat, somewhere flat, maybe a little bit green, started to move into the green a little bit more to the upside, and that was something of strength. But we're not seeing that out of the financials. They were down about 1% last I looked. Healthcare was down about 0.6% last time I looked. Biotech, as I mentioned, new highs again. It started off a little bit slower, but now already early on, first hour of trade, absolutely flying to the upside and new highs there. Energy, a little bit of pressure today. It was down about 1% last I looked. Technology was down about 1%. But you look at the semis as well, down about 1%. So fairly consistent across the board for the most part in many of these different sectors. Nothing that's getting hammered, but we do have a standout. And the standout of the day absolutely is Disney, because the focus that everybody's putting on Disney right now is, hey, how are these subscriptions? How is Disney Plus? How's it going? Apparently, it's going much better than anyone ever could have expected. And as they project out into the future, and this is something we did talk about just the other day when I was on the halftime report in terms of into the future, they're looking to really start to make a move towards the numbers of Netflix. It doesn't mean, by the way, that Netflix is going to lose just because Disney Plus is going to win. It's just an additional thing. And I do think there is probably enough dollars around that actually can spread between the two. So I don't know necessarily. Plus, when you look at Netflix, what you're oftentimes looking at is a company that has done great here in the United States, obviously, but it's been the international story since that time that has been fueling the moves that we've seen from Netflix for quite a while as well. So let's get a quick unusual. We'll get to a couple of the questions. Now we're going to zip along as we go. Unusual today, I will tell you, it is starting off a little bit slower, because yesterday I took a look, and when we got into the first hour of trade, we had 16 unusual option activities that had hit. That was yesterday. We were on pace, and we did end up finishing over 32 million. We might be a little bit slower today. We'll see how it all plays out. Oftentimes throughout the day, things can change, news stories come in, and suddenly you get a lot more volume coming in terms of the derivatives markets. And we've definitely been seeing that. We're 30 plus million, it seems like, for at least the last couple of weeks. We have really been in an incredible spot in terms of these volumes in the derivatives markets. Get educated, understand it. Knowledge is king. I say it every time, and I'll continue to say it because it is so very important. But I'll tell you what, when I'm looking today, we only had 6 unusual option trades in the first hour. So we had 16 yesterday, we had 6 today. I'd say the norm is something closer to 10, 12, maybe 15, but 6, that we're moving along at a little bit of a much slower pace. But one of those names that stuck out to me is a name that I like. I've been in it multiple times. I'm actually in the stock right now. I've been trading the calls around it as I've been holding the stock. It's had a nice move, very similar to what I've been doing with Snap, something very similar where I own the stock, but I trade the options around it when I see the unusual. Today, we're seeing some unusual in there in terms of Twitter. So stock was trading about 51. Now, yesterday, they were buying the 52 strike calls in Twitter. Nice size too. I believe it was about 7,000 or more calls being bought yesterday. Today, we're seeing more buyers, except for now they're buying right at the money. Stock trading 51. They're looking at the December 51 strike calls. They were going for $1.20 to $1.60. So in terms of implied volatilities, that has really come down. And that excites me because I like to look at the risk reward, and you always want to know, what is the normal implied volatility for this? What's sort of the range, and where are we trading now? It's definitely come down in this name significantly as we've been trading this, and as the Nasdaq's been moving steadily higher as well. We've been keeping a very close eye on Twitter and Snap and a lot of these different social media names, including obviously Facebook with all the media coverage that they had just this week. So there is a lot going on in the media space, particularly the social media space as well. So love seeing that. Now let's get to a couple of questions. All right. So comments on ATVI and Blink. Some great company. I love what we've seen in terms of the option activity in there. I'm still in Activision. I've trimmed some of the positions that I had in some of the names. Some have worked, some have not. Blink is one of those names where I've already trimmed a little bit today, as a matter of fact. Do you still like the January options in ConocoPhillips? Yes, absolutely, I do. I like what's going on in energy. I like what's going on in the material space. We continue to see very much more bullish. We do see some bearish paper as well, but far more bullish option trading, derivative trading in materials and energy. So absolutely, I still do. Are you in Twitter and net options? Yes. What else do we got? Net calls, are you holding? It's down. It is down. I am holding for now. So we'll see how that goes. What's happening with BABA? I have not been trading BABA. I for whatever reason, maybe it's just because we've seen far less unusual option activity there. I'm not really sure exactly, but I have not found myself in that name now for the better part probably of a couple of months. Now, I definitely have traded it during this year, but in the last couple of months, I don't recall trading much in BABA. I've seen some paper in there, and sometimes I've shied away because the option paper in there, oftentimes because of where the stock is, because of the implied volatilities, can be as easily as expensive as trading certain stocks. So sometimes that'll keep me from being involved, because I like to trade enough to make something meaningful when I get into some of these trades. Hello, Pete. What do you think about Twilio options? I've been in that many times this year. It's been an absolute monster for me. When I've been in there, I am not in there right now. So just being real on this thing. Morning, Pete, CCJ. Yeah, that's one of those names as well that hits, and it's kind of an exciting name that you got to throw that in the energy space, I would say as well. I am not in it right now, but I have been. As a matter of fact, I was in this name very recently, but I am not in it as we speak right now. What do you think about Tesla going past quadruple witching and including the S&P 500? Tesla's a monster, and I've always said this. Gene Munster gets all the credit in the world, Loop Capital, and Gene Munster back in 2017. So some of these guys jump on the bandwagon and they give Gene credit, and then suddenly they take credit for themselves for what they are saying. I personally will never do that. Gene Munster gets all the credit in the world, and I learned from him. He's a good friend. He's a very smart man. And we talked about this name. We've talked about many names, Apple, a lot of various names over the years, Gene and I. He's become a good friend, and we had him on the Market Rebellion Roundtable not too terribly long ago. But when we have talked, 2017, Gene Munster said this. He said, it's a tech company, not a car company. And the way you have to look at it is the car is the hardware. Everything else is the software side of things. That's what makes it a tech company. And I've agreed with him since he said that. That's why I think a lot of people misunderstood. And for some reason or another, so long, they wanted to put it in the category of Ford and GM and everything else. Now, not everybody believes that. I do. And I believe what Gene's talking about, that it is a tech company far more than it is a quote unquote automobile company. And the data that they collect and all of that, people can say they don't like that. They don't believe that. That's fine. That's totally fine. Everybody has a position, an opinion. But I will tell you this: that stock is certainly traded a heck of a lot more like a tech company than a car company, right? So let's give Gene some credit there, and not give credit to yourselves. Give credit to Gene Munster, because he did an outstanding job highlighting that, and that goes back to 2017. And I think that was a very smart route that Gene took then. Hold Vale Jan 17s or take profits now. There is absolutely nothing wrong with being disciplined and taking some profits, trimming. I can tell you this: we've continued to see option paper in a bullish manner coming into Vale, as I talked about just a little while ago. So I don't know if we're done. I don't think that we're done on the material space yet. I don't even know if we're close, and I still like a lot of those names. So yes, I trade those names. And you're asking, should I sell it to take some profit? I trim, but I trim in names just because I'm trying to be disciplined as I possibly can. I've continued to see that option paper in there. Our guys at Market Rebellion done an absolutely wonderful job on that. So trimming, what's wrong with trimming? Then you still have a piece of it. So that's the way I would answer that question. I don't think that I would take it all off, though, personally. That's just my own opinion. Everybody's got an opinion, right? So got some questions. Are you in solo? I am not in solo at this time, but I was really very recently, because we have had unusual, but I am not in it right at this moment. What about the financials like Bank of America? I love the financials. And as I've said for a long time, you not only get the dividend yield, but you also are able to sell options against it. Although now you're not getting the same kind of premiums we were getting. We were getting incredible implied volatilities. Those have come back dramatically. But great example of that was, we talked about this many times. I talked about the halftime. I've talked about it here on the tape. But a JP Morgan's a great example of that. When stock was 100 and you're selling the 105s and you're getting approximately $2. If you can do that every single month, let's think about that. It's 12 months in a year. That's $24. That's $24 towards a $100 stock if it does not move. Plus you get the dividend yield. So that's why we do what we do. And you have to pay attention. You have to understand what you're doing. But there's that rolling category possibility that you can have there. And that's what we look for. Oftentimes that was the key to holding on to these financials when others were struggling, I think, was selling calls against Bank of America, selling against Capital One, selling them against JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, whichever names you want to pick. And I'm in almost all those names. I am not in Wells Fargo, but I've been selling calls against these financials. Absolutely. So when you see long positions for me in stock, almost always, and I've said this many times, probably close to 90% of those are covered with a call that I've sold against it. That's probably out of the money by about 5%. And if it gives me enough premium, I'm going to sell it. If it doesn't, I'm not. And that's, that's part of the discipline that you've got to have. Lastly, because I said I was going to be quick and I'm not very quick at all. Let's see. Also, VIX May expiration. I'm sorry, that one's not detailed enough, so I don't want to answer that because I'm not really sure what they're asking. Selling calls against CCL. If I owned CCL, I would probably use, because that still does have some very strong implied volatilities, far less than it was, but still a great implied volatilities to sell premium against. Just because the VIX comes down doesn't mean every single stock's implied volatility comes down, but it does mean those that trade very similar to the VIX, to the S&P, like an Apple and like many other names, that does mean that volatility is going to come down. And implied volatilities in Apple is significantly less now than it was a month ago, 2 months ago, 3 months ago, 4 months ago. There's no doubt about that. But there are other names out there where there are some great implied volatilities because their stocks are moving all around. Whether you're looking at a Tesla or whatever name you want to pick out, Moderna, some of those names, they will have some higher implied volatilities. Maybe not as high as they were, absolutely not as high as they were back in March and some of those other months where we had so much turmoil going on and confusion, but still, it's something that you've got to keep an eye on. That's why having the knowledge and looking at the applied volatility is also very, very important. We do that when we're buying calls, do it when we're selling calls. You always want to know what the implied volatilities are now versus normal and all the rest. Folks, that's going to be it. I hope you have an absolutely wonderful weekend. We continue to travel. We're in Sarasota now. We're absolutely loving it. We were in St. Pete the last couple of days, then on to Naples, and it's just been a wonderful journey, and we're really excited about it. It's really been a lot of fun. Then we're going to be on our way back once we get down to the bottom into Naples. So we're really excited about that, having a really great time. And I want to thank all the people in Tampa. We were hoping to do something from Tampa Stadium. It did not work out, but that's okay. We still had some fun, and we had a friend's house. I won't say who it is, who had a beautiful home on the water where we were able to do the halftime earlier in the week. So that was fun. And the 5 p.m. show. Folks, have a great day of trading. We'll see you next Monday.